Thank you ever so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm Juliet Lawton of the Business Lincolnshire events team, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Futureproof Your Hospitality Business webinar, where we'll be discussing the significance of having a well-defined business model focusing on your customer value proposition in a post-COVID-19 world. Today's webinar is brought to you by the Business Lincolnshire Growth Hub in partnership with Visit Lincoln and Sheffield Hallam University. And we're here to provide support for businesses during these uncertain times. The Growth Hub want to help as many businesses across Greater Lincolnshire as we can. We're continuing to share the latest updates and advice as we receive it to make sure every business is aware of the potential funding, learning opportunities and tailored support that is on offer. We're also keen to share local business innovations and successes. So if you have an inspiring story to tell, do please get in touch with us. For the latest news and guidance for businesses on this continuously evolving situation, please visit our website, www.businesslincolnshire.com. Should you wish to speak to an advisor at all, you can do so by emailing businesslincolnshire@lincolnshire.gov.uk. Okay, so now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today's webinar. That's Alicia Alley and Philip Coombs. Alicia is a social scientist researching in the areas of sustainable development, information and communication technologies, innovation, corporate social responsibility, destination management and hospitality management education. She has experience in research design, which led to her involvement in several contract research projects working with government offices, destination management organisations, and international and national and local businesses. Philip is a senior lecturer in marketing in the business school at Sheffield Hallam University. His principal research interests lie in industrial marketing, strategic management, and in particular, the concept of business models. Before joining Sheffield Hallam University, Phil spent 32 years in the logistics and transportation industry. So I'll hand over to you now, Alicia and Philip, please. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Juliet, and welcome everybody. We're really grateful that you took the time to spend with us this afternoon. And before I start, I just want to echo what Juliet said, is we want to make this session as facilitative as possible. So feel free to jump in with questions or ask your questions, because this session is about you and it's about how you can think about innovating your business model for the future. So please, feel free to contribute to this conversation as much as you would like to. So Juliet has already introduced us, so I'll get straight into what we're going to be discussing today. And I want to start off with a photo. And this is taken from Toronto in Canada, and it's a sad photo for me, because I've been involved in hospitality for a very long time, but it also connotates some very powerful messages for me in terms of what hospitality is, in terms of that warm, caring generosity. And the reason I put this photo up is there is a famous saying which is around, do not let a crisis go to waste. And while the pandemic has brought us a lot of challenges, it has also allowed us to step back and really think about what are we going to do next with our business? Where can we make changes and how can we be more resilient? So it has given us that chance to really reimagine what the future of hospitality might look like. And the reason I talked about the hospitality values is, in my perspective, and I'm sure you might have different opinions on this, is that the values of hospitality is what will carry us through this pandemic. So it's those values of being warmth, welcoming, generosity, willingness, collaborativeness. Those type of values are what our consumers are looking for in the future. So our consumers will be changing their behavior right now as a result of the pandemic, but also they will be looking for these values as part of those businesses which grow with them in the future. And that's something I think that needs to be recognized in terms of how you're going to design and develop and think about your business model. The other point I would like to make is, in terms of hospitality, we're very resilient. And a lot of exciting ideas have come out of hospitality during periods of crisis. So the last sort of big pandemic that we had, which wasn't worldwide but was confined to certain parts of the world, was the SARS pandemic, and that happened between 2002 to 2004. And actually, during that pandemic, it led to the growth of a very big Chinese company, which some of you might have heard of, called Alibaba. Alibaba actually grew out of that pandemic in Asia because people were afraid to travel and they were afraid for human contact. And therefore that online shopping platform exploded. So again, it's to think about, ways in which we can use these downturns to sort of maximize our ideas and reimagine what our future might look like. The economic recession, which happened in 2008, two very famous household names actually became quite popular during that recession, Airbnb and Uber. Both of them actually were I would say, offsprings of that recession. Airbnb was able to grow because people had less disposable income, and they were looking for ways in how they can generate some more income for themselves, and they also had spare assets. So what Airbnb did was to merge both of those concepts together, and they used the internet as that platform to be able to develop and deliver that type of business model. Now, these ideas did not start off as big as they are right now, but they started off as small businesses and they grew to the large businesses that they are. But what they all had in common was that they used a crisis and they used a period to reflect and look at what was happening in the marketplace to be able to become innovative. So in terms of hospitality, it's around thinking how we can really challenge what I would say, challenge the orthodox and challenge to think about new approaches for our businesses. And I'll give you some further examples of this. Some of these are not hospitality examples, but it's going to give you ideas in thinking about how businesses have sort of challenged the orthodox situation. So think about, I love buying shoes. I don't know how many of you love purchasing shoes. And a lot of people think that you have to actually go to a shoe shop to actually try on and purchase shoes. There is a company called Zappos that has actually challenged that orthodox and say people don't need to go to shops to actually buy shoes. You can actually get shoes delivered to your house, and they've set up a very successful online business like this. There's also a company called Rent the Runway. Designer clothes are very expensive, and many times if you buy a designer piece, you're probably going to wear it once. So what the Rent the Runway has done is allow people to rent designer clothes at their convenience, and also allow you to sell your designer clothes. So they're looking at different ways in which they can challenge the market. But if I were to ask you a question, is if you were a food and beverage supplier, and if you were using yogurt in making some of your products, what would you do if, or how would you make yogurt? For example, if 50% of the world's dairy supply was wiped out. So if 50% of the cows who supplied milk to make yogurt were wiped out, what would you do? Would we stop making yogurt, or would we do something else? Any thoughts on this? Phil, do you have any thoughts on this?
So, so half the cows are wiped out,
Yeah.
and then, what do we do about
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing yogurt? Well, we
Mm-hmm.
have to think of other ways, don't we? So maybe
Mm-hmm.
looking at vegetable-based
Yep.
materials. I mean, there is a growth at the moment in vegetarianism and veganism, and vegetarian or vegetable-based milks, coconut milks,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And this is a big growth area, isn't it, at the moment? So it's a question of sort of thinking outside the box, looking for alternative, more sustainable ingredients in this particular case, I guess.
Yeah. So we would find another way to make yogurt. It mightn't be the same taste, or it mightn't be the same production, but we would find a way to make this happen, and therefore looking at these alternative approaches. And that's what we want to cover today in today's webinar. So these are the key things that we're hoping for you to take away today. Why do you need to have a resilient innovation strategy? What is business model innovation, and what are the key elements? And how can you innovate your business model? So we're going to leave you with some tips. But again, this needs to be contextualized to your own business and how this might actually work for you. So these are some tips we think that might be ideas you can take forward, but again, it is all dependent on the nature and the context of the business. So I will hand over to Juliet, because here we have our first poll question.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. All right, so we have the polls here. We have 3 questions, which I think Phil's going to talk us through, and I'm just going to launch the poll now for you all to see.
Okay, so hello again, everybody. So just before I start to talk about what a business model is and what it isn't, I would like to ask you, for your own business, do you consider that you have a well-defined business model already? And in fact, do you actually use the term business model? Because this is really how I actually became interested in this this topic about 10 years ago. And also, if you do not use the term business model, what terms do you use to describe your business or your business model?
Thank you, Phil. I would just encourage you all to submit your answers to those for us, please. We've got 27% have answered so far, so I'll just leave it a few more moments for others to give us their thoughts on these 3 questions. Okay, we're getting there, 66%, 71%. Okay, we've got some comments from Gillian in the chat as well with regards to the questions.
Some interesting answers coming through there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right,
yeah,
then,
most people say they do have
shall,
a well-defined business model, but most people don't use the term, which is interesting.
There we go.
And then we have 44% think it's strategy. Well, that's again something I'll talk about very shortly, actually.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. I shall stop sharing that now and we'll move on. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Can we? We've still got the polling on the screen.
It should have been gone. Just a second. It's still there now?
It is on mine, but I'll just talk while we're looking at that. It's interesting that 81% of people don't use the term business model, because that's really how I became interested in this sort of just over 10 years ago. Before I joined Sheffield Hallam, I spent many years working in transport and logistics in customer facing roles, and this is how I became interested in business models, because I used to attend lots of meetings with both customers and potential customers, and they would use this term business model. So back in the late 80s, when I did my bachelor's degree, nobody, used that term in those days. And since then, certainly from the millennium anyway, the term started to be used a lot more. And I kind of thought, well, do people actually know what it means, or what does it mean, and this kind of thing? So do we really understand business models well enough? And there's somebody here, or sorry, 25% of you say business plan, 44% strategy. Well, again, that's an interesting point. Is a business model strategy? Well, I would suggest it probably isn't strategy. Strategy is a more sort of higher level approach. So there is a view that business models are sort of appear or sort of fit in rather between strategy and the business operation. So basically strategy talks about which direction you want your business to go, or what business you're in, but business model is sort of the bit in between the strategy and the actual and the business operation. So, I mean, the term business model, sometimes people talk about our business model as a story, a story of how the business operates. And sometimes we use some terminology like the McDonald's model, perhaps, and we all know what that is. Even the Southwest Airlines business model in the United States, which Ryanair and EasyJet have replicated. So sometimes a business model can have a name. So can we move on to the next slide? Okay, so basically, what is a business model? So as academics, we go back to studies, existing studies, previous studies, and there is an interesting quote here which says that every viable organization is built on a sound business model, whether or not its founders or its managers conceive of that. So interestingly, a large proportion of you guys today say you don't use the term, but your business will be based on a model of some sort, even though a lot of you perhaps don't recognize it in those terms. So, but the main sort of consensus really about a business model is that it creates, delivers, and captures value. Okay, so you create value, you deliver the value. Okay, now value can be, as academics, we talk about value as perceived benefits minus perceived sacrifices. Okay, and also how you capture the value. You know, how do you realize your revenue? Okay. And also, I've just used the word benefits as well, because there is a big argument that customers buy benefits. They don't buy the tangible product. So this cheap pen I've got here today, this cheap plastic pen, rollerball pen, probably, I don't know, about £1 if you want to buy it. We don't buy this plastic pen. We buy the benefit that it delivers. And there's a big argument around that as well. So can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so as I say, it's the word business model has become fashionable vocabulary. Okay, people use the term, and this is how I became interested in this. Different people, it means different things to different people. Okay, now when I first started, when I left industry and became a PhD student, I discovered that it meant different things to different people. There was very little research on what a business model is. And the result of that was that managers at that time were really confused about what it was or what it is. And as I say, the only consensus I could find at the time was it related to value creation or even co-creation. And that's something we can talk about a little bit later. So we can also co-create value with people who collaborate with us, perhaps, or partners that we're working with. But that then leads us on to think about what are the components of a business model. Now, as I say, going back to the poll, people talked about strategy. They used the word strategy and used the word planning. Again, strategy, that means different things to different people as well. Some people say strategy is a plan. Okay, and some people have used the word plan and strategy interchangeably there. So let's have a look at some components. So can we have a look at the next slide? Okay, so just before we look at components, again, another little bit of terminology where we're sort of leading on to this topic of innovation. We can look at closed business models from a purely internal perspective. So your model, again, we're going to talk more in detail about the components of a model shortly, but the model can be very inward looking. It can be very internal focused, okay, purely looking at your business. But more recently, studies have looked at what we call open business models and opening up your business to innovation. Okay, and you can achieve that with working in collaboration with people, working in partnerships with your suppliers, and things like that. And that actually encourages, or has been seen to encourage innovation. Okay, can we move on to the next slide? Okay,
yes, so we have a poll here. Yes, so we're just trying to get a sense of whether or not you have an open, closed, or a mixed business model, a mix of open and closed. So I think Juliet will be launching this second poll for us.
Yeah.
So the first question is, how would you describe your business model? And then the second question is, do you think your business model can be more open?
Okay, hopefully everyone should be able to see that on their screen now. I can see people are starting to put their votes in, so thank you for that.
Let's have a look. So 100% have said, yeah, do you think you can have a more open business model? Well, that's interesting. So that that to me presents massive opportunities for people here today, where you can collaborate, you can partner with other people. It doesn't always have to be suppliers. It can be other people within your business. So collaboration is a big thing. Partnering. Let's have a look. So how do you describe your business model? Most of them are saying, okay, mixed. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, that's another interesting answer. Research is developing now, which basically says that every business model is open to a greater or lesser extent, whereas originally we had these clear definitions of closed or open. But as I say, in terms of business research, it's now evolving more into every business model is open to a greater or lesser extent. So let's have a look at some components. Okay, so somebody at the very beginning said it's a plan, it's a strategy. Okay, and as you can see here, we do have this element here, and this is only one perspective. Okay, this isn't saying this is or isn't a business model. This is one group of researchers' own perspective. So we have the strategy part. Okay, so but really the more detail here is the value network. So to a greater or lesser extent is the business model open. Okay, and it's your network. Okay, so your customers, suppliers, other people within the network. Okay, these are the people that can help to innovate. Okay, and then we have the value creation and value capture. Okay, so have a think about how your business actually creates value for your customers, and actually and how do you actually capture that? How do you realize your revenue? Okay, it may be that you have contracts with people. Okay, some businesses have a lot of contracts, especially in business to business, B2B. A lot of businesses are operated under long-term contracts, but in B2C, less so really. So this is just one perspective of the components to help you think about how you can, think about your business in a different way. Okay, can we have a look at the next slide? Okay, so we've had a look at one perspective on the components of a business model. Okay, so I'm suggesting it's not a business plan, it's not a business strategy, even though those all sort of fall into the concept. So how do we turn this into a useful tool? Because at the end of the day, we want you to come away from today hopefully having a challenging you to think about your business in a different way, okay, and coming up with some new and innovative ideas. So let's turn this into a useful tool. Now, there is quite a famous tool called the Business Model Canvas. This comes from a book by Osterwalder and Pigneur 10 years ago now. And they created this business model canvas, and it's become quite a popular way to basically tell the story about your business. This came from a book, and Osterwalder and Pigneur created this book called Business Model Generations, and they co-created it from, I think it's 47 or 49 business executives that they worked with in the creation of this book. So it's just not purely them. This was created in collaboration with business. And in a way, this is what we're talking about today, is collaborating, working in partnership with others. So this particular book, two very high-ranking scholars here, Osterwalder and Pigneur, in their own right, but they created this book, and which evolved into this canvas by working, as I say, with a lot of people in industry, and this was co-created with their help. So the main thing, I'll just initially talk about the value proposition, okay, and then Alicia will talk about the other components of the model. So this is only one approach, okay, but it's a popular approach. I use it in my own teaching as well, and I know Alicia does. So this helps to break down the components of a model, okay. So of course, the most important thing is what are you offering? What's your product? What's your service? And so on. But what I'd also challenge you to do today is to think about your product and service. Well, perhaps break it down. Okay, so you obviously all know your business very well. You all know your businesses inside out. But I would ask you to think about what you're offering. Think about what benefits are you offering. As I say, customers, there's a strong argument that customers buy benefits. They don't buy a physical, tangible product. You know, if you go into a, you know, if you go into the O2 shop or the EE shop and want to, you know, change your mobile phone, you don't come out with that lump of metal or lump of plastic. That's not what you're buying. What you're buying is actually what it does for you, you know, the benefits. So think about that in terms of your benefits, okay? And also think about your product or service in terms of what sets it apart from the competition, okay? What are you doing better than the competition, or maybe what you're not doing as a competition? Think about it in that way. And also think about the future as well. How can your product or service evolve in the future? How can it be future-proofed? To a greater or lesser extent. So as I say, so don't just purely think about your product or service, try and break it down and think about sort of the components, if you like, the individual components of your product or service. So I'll hand over to Alicia now, who'll talk about the other parts of the model.
Thank you, Phil. So with the business model canvas, it helps you to really see your business in sort of discrete elements, but also consider the relationship between the different components. So if you're thinking about the value proposition, if that were to change, how would this impact on the other elements? And so, for example, your revenues or your customer relationships or your channels. One of the key points I would say is that value proposition is at the heart of business model innovation. Is really thinking about what value you are driving for your target markets and for your customers. So it's really making sure that you're really aware of what it is that you're offering to customers and what need are you filling for those customers. The second aspect is the relationships. So based on your value proposition, what kind of relationships are you having with your specific customer segment? So are you having very personal relationships? Are you offering a very personal service, or are you offering a standardized service, or are you offering a mixed bag? Or you may have different customer segments, and for each customer segment, you offer a different type of relationship with those customers. Again, that helps determine the other elements of the business model, because it will influence the way you drive revenue into your business, but also the key activities that you look at. The other element is in terms of your segment. So who are your customers and which groups of customers are you trying to reach? So are you mass marketing? So are you just trying to reach a broad range of customers? Are you taking a very niche approach? So therefore you've identified a specific group of customers that you want to invest in your product? Are you taking a segmented approach whereby you have in different segments or different portions of your target market? And again, that's really important to think about. And I'll give you some examples here of customer segments. So millennials are quite a large target market for hospitality businesses right now. And pre-pandemic, they were the strongest growing market for hospitality. And a lot of hospitality concepts actually redesigned and changed their offer to be able to attract this target market. One of the better known examples is the introduction of the Joe and Joe brand of hotels from Accor Hotel Group. And this brand was actually designed to meet the millennial target market from the lobby area to the bedroom. So it was around a place to come and relax, but also engage and form a community. And what Accor did differently when they designed this brand, they got millennials as part of the design process to create that brand with them, to be able to make sure that they were having the right offer. So again, it's really thinking about the different groups of target markets you're trying to reach, and how are you going to be able to penetrate and reach those different segments. And that takes us to revenue. So what are your revenue streams? How are you driving your revenue into your business? Are you just using a direct sort of booking model, or are you having different kinds of models? With the pandemic, there's been a lot of talk about subscription services, and I'm not talking about Netflix. I'm talking about hospitality offering subscription services. So for example, hotels are thinking about offering subscription services to customers as a way of, looking at how they redefine the luxury market, because the nature of luxury is changing. Are you offering different types of revenue streams to different types of customers? So are you segmenting based on your customers? So again, it's thinking about how you really think about your revenue, because there are more than one ways to actually drive revenue into your business. And maybe after today, that might be what you want to take away and focus on in terms of where you want to sort of diversify and innovate your business model, because you can innovate in any of these elements in your business model at any point in time in terms of how you want to develop that. It's also around your key activities. So what are the key things that you're doing to make your business work? So we're in the business of hospitality, but what aspect of hospitality are you in? Are you delivering food and drink, accommodation, leisure services, catering facilities? Are you feeding people at work? Are you doing a mix of things? And what are these activities that you engage in to make the business model work? So how it is that you're driving those benefits for customers. So again, it's good to think about making a list of what those key activities are. And then the resources. So what are your human, plant, and capital resources that you need to make your business model work? And what level of investment do you need to make this happen? So with the pandemic, we've seen a lot of business have to change their operations, and some really good case studies I've seen is some restaurants have actually been able to diversify and create their own online supermarkets, if that's the correct word for it. So instead of, based on the type of food they were offering to customers, there wasn't those ingredients readily available in supermarkets for customers to be able to prepare their own meals. And I've seen businesses diversify their product lines by offering packages which you can actually take away and order online and cook. There is a pizza company in London, and you can actually order a pizza, but actually you order all the ingredients and you can prep the pizza at home to make it just like the pizza you would get at this establishment. So again, it's really thinking about what resources and how you can transfer those resources to make your business model work. It's also about your channels. So how are you reaching your customers? So how are you reaching your customers now? So your customer value proposition must also be transferable to an online value proposition. Digital is critically important in the way we work now. So if you don't have an online presence, and if you're not engaging with your customers in some online way, that's something I would recommend you consider in how you innovate your business model. And maybe hospitality businesses might be shut temporarily, but you can still be having an online conversation with your customers to keep that communication going. So when the business does reopen, you can have that demand there waiting for you. So it's really thinking about how you reach out to your customers in terms of that online proposition. You can share things that you've been doing during the pandemic, your outreach programs, or what you've been doing, to support your local community, or what's been happening in your businesses. Customers want to see what you're doing as a business. So therefore, transferring that customer value proposition to an online value proposition is really important. It's also about your cost structure. So how are you set up? What is your cost structure? And how can you reduce cost in your business model? So do you have quite a lot of fixed cost, or do you have a lot of variable costs, which can be stripped back to make your business more flexible and more agile? Again, that's something to think about. Is also thinking about in your reach, how accessible you are. So how quickly can you mobilize your business to become more accessible to your target market? One good example I saw again during the pandemic was a business who built stages for a lot of live events. And with the pandemic, as we know, the live event industry doesn't currently have any business at the moment. But what this company did was they had a group of skilled tradesmen, builders, craftsmen, craftspeople, who would build these fantastic stages for these big international superstars. So what they realized was they couldn't do this anymore, but what was needed was everybody needed to work from home for some point in time, and we all needed a desk to work from home from. And actually there was a shortage of furniture for office furniture equipment at one point during the pandemic. I mean, Phil and I would tell you there was one point we couldn't get laptops because, you know, the demand had increased so drastically. So this company, using the skill set it had, turned around their business, and they created a new line by actually creating a business where it used the talent to build desks for people to be able to work at home quite easily using the skills. So therefore they didn't have to put anyone on furlough. They didn't have to stop the business, but also they created another revenue stream for themselves. So again, it's thinking about what you have and how you can be able to channel that in a different way. And then the last point is really on your key partners. And this links to the point Phil mentioned earlier around the collaborative or more open business model. We don't work in isolation, and we cannot ever work in isolation. So it's really thinking around how you use your networks to help support and boost and build that collaboration. And I think the networks offered through BizLink and Share and Visit Lincoln are a really great starting points to enable you to do that, because you might find synergies, but you can also find ways you can partner and probably achieve some competitive advantages for yourself. So that's a very big picture of business model innovation, but we wanted to share the canvas with you because it gives you a snapshot of what it is like to segment the different elements of your business model. And it's really great to take away that snapshot, and if afterwards you can start to locate the key elements of your business model, and from there try to identify perhaps things that you think you can probably want to innovate post our conversation today. But there are a few things I still would like to emphasize based on some points we raised earlier, because these are the key things your business model will address. Your customer, who is your target customer? What need is being met for your customer? And what are you offering to address that need? So I mentioned earlier that customer behavior is changing as a result of the pandemic. Some of the trends which have been predicted is that people will still travel. However, they might travel for shorter periods of time, and when they travel, they would look for more outdoor activities because of our current restrictions in being able to experience outdoors. Some of the other trends listed is that when people go out to eat, they will probably go out to eat less, but when they do go out, they will stay longer. So therefore, how are you going to capitalize on that time when they stay longer? So therefore, your average spend per customer might increase. Some of the future trends, looking again in terms of hospitality, is people will still travel, but they're looking to things like self-catering accommodation. They're looking things like campsites, again because of hygiene concerns, and is really making sure that you're very visible in terms of making that those hygiene factors customers are aware in terms of what you're doing. So the industry is resilient, as I said before, but it's really thinking about how your customer needs are changing and how you're going to be able to change to be able to manage that. So that's why I have in this square box in purple here, it's really about your customer value proposition. And if you get that right, the rest of your business model, the elements will sync with this, but it's really being clear around who are your target customers, what need are you meeting for them, and what offering are you providing to address that need. And if you think your customers are going to be the same post-pandemic, I would recommend that you probably do some engagement with your customers to see if that is actually true, because there might be subtle changes that you might not recognize. for example, customers will still want experiences, but they mightn't be willing to come to your property for experiences. You might need to bring the experiences to them at home. So how you know, recreate, let's say, a 50th birthday party, which you would have in a restaurant, but how you create that experience in a box and deliver it to somebody's house. So again, it's really thinking about how you can strategize around that.
I mean, I think it was Alicia, the
Yeah.
late Steve Jobs from Apple, always said people don't always know what they want until you show it to them. And that's just exactly what you said. Take the product or service to the customer. I think that's a great statement. Yeah.
So just to interrupt our talking, because we've been talking quite a lot, we have the last poll for you. And we have 2 questions for you on this poll, which Juliet is going to launch for us. The first one is, do you think your customer value proposition, so CVP, can be strengthened as an online value proposition? So if you currently don't have if you currently don't share your business model online, or you do share it online, do you think it could still be strengthened, because digital is really important in these pandemic times now? So do you think it can be strengthened? And the second one is, do you think your customers have changed their purchase behaviors as a result of the pandemic?
Absolute yes to question 2.
Yeah. And the reason I'm talking about the online proposition is because probably the first point of contact your customers will have with you will be online. So whether it be through a tweet or posting on Facebook or through your website, that's going to be the first point of contact that they probably find out about your business. Or if they hear about you from one of their friends or recommendation, the first thing they're going to do is probably use their smartphones and Google your business. So are you transferring that vision you have for your business offline to online, and how are you doing this? And that might be where you might want to think about how you can innovate your business model, because that's probably going to be important in moving your business forward into the future. Great. Thanks everybody for that. So I think 73% of our delegates here say that they can strengthen their customer value proposition online. So again, it's really using that canvas to probably help you start that process of thinking about what you can do in that online presence. And this does not need significant heavy investment to make small changes. Sometimes it can just be, thinking about, are you engaging on the right social media channels for your target market? I talk to my students about this a lot. They're very quick to say they're going to use Facebook. And then I said, well, does your target market really use Facebook? There are other networks there. Or they're very quick to say, well, we're going to make sure we have a good presence on Google. And I said, yes, Google is great for us in the UK, but what about other parts of the world? If you're targeting customers from China or from Russia or from the US, is Google their first search engine or their first port of call? So it's, again, thinking about, how you're going to really strategize to get that online value proposition, which conveys the proposition that you're offering offline to customers. So, oops, let me just get the slide moving here. So on this slide, I just want to share 3 sort of ideas in terms of ways you might want to think about how you innovate your business model. So the first one is really around the industry model. And it's thinking about, can your business move horizontally into another sector of the hospitality industry, or can it move into another industry? So the example I gave you earlier around the live event company, they've moved into a completely different sector, but they're still generating fantastic revenue streams for their business. So it's thinking about, what product do we have and can we move it into a different type of sector? So, can you move some of your product into retail, or can you move it into some other back of house function? So again, you might want to challenge and see how that can support your business. The other one is around revenue. So can you consider different ways of generating revenue for your business? And we talked a lot about I mentioned subscription services earlier, but are there other ways you might want to generate revenue? and this is quite an interesting one because people always think the only way to create revenue is selling directly to the customer, but there are lots of different revenue mechanisms or different types of pricing models that you can probably look into. So, one of the most famous business model is the Gillette business model, is the razor and the blade model. So the actual razor itself is the actual innovation, whereas the handle of the razor is what you have to buy. But it's actually the razor is said. So it's thinking about how you can have two segments where customers have to purchase one element and therefore they have to keep coming back to get something else. So it's really thinking creatively around your revenue model. Do you need to stick with the same revenue model, or can you try new pricing models? What about looking at some of the online websites, so third-party sellers? And I know a lot of companies are trying to use Amazon and eBay, but if you are in a more luxury segment of the market, are those the right mechanisms for you to be using as third parties? What about other third-party sites? So we use a lot of online travel agencies in hospitality. So we have Booking.com, we have TripAdvisor, we have Trivago. So again, are those the right sites to be reaching your target markets, or do you probably need to be using more specialist online travel agencies to really get those niche markets? So again, it's thinking about your revenue model. And the third one is really around the enterprise. So this is really focusing on challenging the existing boundaries. So if you remember from earlier on, I talked about Zappos and how they challenge the industry in terms of how shoes are sold. Other good example here is Netflix. They've challenged the whole sort of television, film, and cinema industry in terms of what the industry is going to look like in that sector. So it's really thinking about, can your small idea or your big ideas, can they actually challenge the structure and the way the industry operates? And I think, it can, and I think there's potential for a lot of these ideas to do this. Um, and the sharing economy, everybody hears about Airbnb, but there are numerous other sharing economy businesses just like Airbnb, which are doing fantastically successful, because they're challenging the sort of traditions of the industry. Pre-pandemic, um, linked to house sharing, there was also food sharing. So you can go online and if you travel into some part of the world which you've never tried the food before and you want to understand the local culture, you could have gone onto a website and actually book a meal in somebody's living room. And you get a local authentic experience, but also you get to share part of that culture with someone. So again, it's how we sort of challenging the enterprise, what it is that you're doing that you think, how can your idea actually revolutionize, and the way you start is with that business model canvas. That is what's going to help you do that, by really identifying who your customers are, what is that value proposition, and how you can develop those other segments of the business model. So these are just some of my thoughts and Phil's thoughts in terms of how you can go away from today thinking around how you might want to innovate now. And it's doing a skills check and an audit check in terms of what skills and resources do you have. So do an audit. What skills and resources do I have and how can I transfer them? It's also understanding your finances. Is really getting to grips in terms of what your finances are and what your finances might look like in the future and how you can position that to help you. And I spoke about the third one before, is really understanding how your customers have changed. Are they focused more locally? Are they willing to travel out of a 5-mile radius? Where your target customer is going to come from now. That's important to really think about. Becoming digital, I would stress this quite a lot. You need to be digital and have a digital presence. And you also, it's not just around having a website, it's also about creating conversations with your customers. You need to be creating those conversations with your customers to get them to want to come back to you after the pandemic has ended or the pandemic has eased off. And this is not just for now, but it's for the future. So we're in COVID times at the moment, but some other type of crisis is going to happen to hospitality. I hope it's not on this global scale, scale, something else is going to happen. And therefore, if we're still able to engage with our customers, it's really important that we keep those conversations going. It's also around keeping your best employees. Um, Thinking about those people who you need to have with you to carry and drive your business forward, and how are you going to, keep those people on board, and what type of support you're offering them to work towards in the future. So because of the financial challenges, business decisions are made in terms of putting employees on furlough or having to scale back the business. But again, if those decisions are made, again, how are you still engaging with those employees, so when the business starts to recoup and grow again, you have those right people in place to keep the business going and keep that creativity flowing. So that's important again. And it's around working together. um, it's around being collaborative and sharing ideas, and that's the only way we will grow and develop as an industry, is if we share our ideas and share our vision for where the industry wants to be. If not, other parts of the world will overtake us and become more competitive than we are here in the UK. So is really thinking hard about what the post-pandemic world will look like for your business, and how it might ask you to change what your business model would look like.
I think we can't underestimate the power of digital marketing in the digital domain as well, as Alicia sort of mentioned earlier. I mean, there is some research that I've recently discovered which said that more than 50% of marketers don't feel capable enough in digital. And that's a staggering statistic there. And even more so, 65% said that they believe their company is not accomplished in digital marketing. So just going back to something Alicia mentioned earlier when she was looking at the business model canvas, and she was talking about segmentation, market segmentation. So, I mean, those of you who have studied marketing will know that the more traditional ways of segmentation, behavioral, geographic, psychographic, and so on. But digital is actually starting to challenge those ideas now. So, for example, the growth of online communities, online brand communities, and what's also called consumer tribes, things like that. So, for example, if you're running your business and you have a Facebook presence or Instagram presence or whatever, and you have all these people following you, or you may have a blog where people are posting comments about your business. Because this is the other thing, especially in hospitality, the growth of social media sites, for example, TripAdvisor, you need to know what people are saying about your business, because, good or bad, and so on, and also the impact of trolls, people deliberately saying bad things about your business. So especially, if you're operating hotel, restaurants, that kind of thing, you really need to have someone monitoring what's being said about your business. And I mean, I've posted things myself about experiences in hotels, and sometimes a hotel will even reply, to what I've said. But so as I say, digital marketing, digital is certainly challenging the traditional ways of segmentation. So as I say, if you do have a social media presence, you have all these people following you, you may have a loyalty scheme perhaps, which I know tends to be for perhaps larger companies. But if you have a loyalty scheme, you're building a massive database of emails and contacts. A few years ago, I went to a business convention. It was the Yorkshire International Business Convention a few years ago, and Sir Terry Leahy, who was the former chief executive of Tesco, gave a presentation. Great presentation. And somebody asked him actually after his presentation, what was his biggest achievement at Tesco? Now, of course, remember, during this time, Tesco grew massively. They opened more stores in the UK and within Europe and further afield. And you would think, he would probably say, something like that, the growth of the business, the growth in turnover and profit. But he didn't say that. He said his biggest achievement was the creation of Club Card, which was a loyalty scheme. Which, of course, if you think about it, that gives you a lot of power, because if you have people belonging to a loyalty scheme, got all this information about your customers, what they're buying, when they're buying, how much they're spending. You've got all this information, and then that can then help you target them with, it enables this two-way communication then. And this is, the importance of digital. So if you have these, if you're big into social media and you have all these people following you, this is challenging segmentation, because you can contact these people. You've got these contacts, and you can sort of look at your business in a different way. So I think my message is, please be aware, if you're not already, of the power of digital marketing for your business.
Thank you for that, Phil. We're slowly coming up to our time, so we'll just go through the last couple of slides very quickly. Yeah, Phil, you want to go through these next two examples that you have?
Yes, very quickly, yes. So okay, just click on the next one. Thank you, Alicia. Yeah, so just a couple of quick examples of innovation. Now, I appreciate these are large companies. So this is just one example. Now, Alicia talked about the channels within the business model canvas. So this is just one example of how TUI control the whole channel right from the time that you book your holiday. So whether it's using their own website or whether they're using their own travel agency. Can we just go back one, please? Thank you. So again, these properties, they won't own them, they'll be leased, they'll be rented. So you book through TUI, you have that experience right from the very beginning. You travel on a TUI airline. Then once you get to your destination, you travel on a TUI bus, which won't be owned by TUI. They'll just be that'll be one of their business partners. And you could even stay in a TUI hotel. Again, they won't own the hotel, but they may have control of it, because they do have a brand called Sensatori, which is a 5-star hotel brand, which is really good. And I've actually experienced this myself, right from booking with TUI all the way through to the hotel experience. So come just look at the next slide, please, Alicia. Again, market disruption. Think about disrupting the market. Again, with airlines. So we have EasyJet's first aeroplane here back in the mid-90s. This was before the real proliferation of the internet, where they had a telephone number and you rang a call center in Luton, booked your flight, and they sent you the ticket through the post, because Stelios said he's not paying commission to travel agencies. And therefore, the cost reduction was passed on to the customer. Now, more recently, of course, Ryanair as well followed a similar model. Of course, more recently now, it's everything has gone online. Prior to EasyJet and Ryanair, we had full service airlines where you got a meal. You paid large prices, unless you're traveling with a charter airline. But if you're traveling with a scheduled airline, you had big prices. Certainly wasn't cheap to travel around the world, and so on. So these guys came and disrupted the market. And of course, pre-COVID, these are two very big airlines in Europe today. This was all complemented, of course, by the deregulation of the skies over Europe as well, which enabled this to happen. So, Alicia, did you want to say something about the travel? You mentioned something about the travel agency and how they've had to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, with the technology really coming to the fore in the 1970s, there was a lot of disintermediation. So the middle person was cut out. And as a result, whilst it was challenging for travel agents, I think what it's done for the sector is also giving them, innovative approach to look at their business models. So now you find more niche travel agents and niche store operators and wholesalers operating based on experiences, because the industry is moving towards being experience led. So again, that's been quite exciting in terms of a development, but it's also helped to manage the temporality of the industry. So the industry in tourism and hospitality, tourism especially, is based on seasonality, but because of the technology, we are connected consumers, we are connected tourists, and therefore now we're able to access destinations 24/7. So therefore it sort of helped to manage that period of demand. So we're now willing to travel more in off-peak seasons, because we're not confined to the sort of packages guided by the big tour wholesalers, but we can actually create our packages for ourselves, and we can use these niche suppliers to help us do that, which has also been very great for the industry in terms of when we can actually get revenue. So we can now have I would say a more spread of revenue throughout the year rather than just having peak periods. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just on the
Okay.
second to last slide is just some thoughts I've put down in thinking about if these might be some innovative business models of the future. So after today, if you get a chance, go on to Streetify. So Streetify is a software you can use to create a virtual shopping street. It might be something you might want to think about collaborating in your local area, sort of give your local shopping street where customers can come in and have a virtual look. And again, helping to create that market presence for yourself. Again, invitation only. Again, is thinking about luxury differently. So luxury in the future will not be about extravagance. It'll be about being safe and being impactful. So again, are you building invitation only concept? Again, this again could be the way you also price your offer. And again, creating that exclusivity of your product. What about 24 hours check-in, check-out? It's been heavily disputed in the industry based on resource needs. But again, is this something you might want to think about offering for your customers in order to cater to different demands? What about naming your own price? So offering a sort of auction type of revenue model based on when you have excess demand. So when you have excess capacity storage. So if you have a lot of stock, maybe you get people to name their price, and that's a way you can probably think around alleviating some of that spare supply. So these are just some thoughts I've jotted down, but it's to leave you with ideas to think about, how are ways you can start innovating your business model. And our final thought is really to leave you with the canvas for you to go away and think about where and how you might want to innovate your business model, thinking about who your customers are, what is the value proposition, and then use that to build and develop further your business model and think about the elements that you potentially might want to innovate. So that's it from us. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being here today, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Alicia and Philip. There's definitely lots for us to be thinking about there to help to innovate business going forward. This, as Alicia says, brings us to the Q&A session. I'm conscious of time though, so I know that we probably need to take a few questions now, and if there's any others, then we can pick those up afterwards. So I'll now pass over to Charlotte and from Visit Lincoln, and she'll be facilitating the session. A reminder, you can still submit any questions to us through the chat feature, as described earlier, or you can indicate to us if you would like to ask your question verbally and let us know, and we look forward to hearing from you. So have you got any questions at all? We'll hand over to Charlotte.
Thank you. Thanks so much. That was a really, really interesting presentation, and thank you so much for kind of talking us through. I suppose just before I sort of ask a question that I've got is, we have seen so many Lincolnshire businesses diversify since last lockdown, and I think a lot of that has been about reacting to circumstances outside of our control. And we've had some very in-depth conversation with businesses about how they're innovating, how they're changing, how they're looking at new customer models. And I suppose what I want to do is just sort of share some feedback, I suppose, from the conversations we've been having. The first one is almost like recognising how important it is around, redefining your business model. We were talking to a couple of the commercial banks a couple of weeks ago, looking at how funding was issued at the beginning of the lockdown, and potentially how funding might be issued, as we kind of work our way through it. And I think one of the things that really came out loud in that conversation is to access future funding for our businesses, which is needed. We have to prove viability, and some of the documentation that you have to present with that is a robust business model. And I think, again, one of the things I've taken from those conversations we've been having with the commercial banks and then our partners is actually how important it is to sometimes have the right paperwork to support and back up those conversations that you're having with the banks. I think the other thing that I was reading the other day from Visit England is actually, you know, everything we value in life has completely been challenged with coronavirus. And what we're probably going to see, and potentially what we're seeing already, is actually how, you know, there's probably going to be a large proportion of people who have got more disposable income than they probably ever had previously. Now, sadly, I understand that won't be the case for everybody, and you know, supporters need to be given to those people who don't have it. But again, when we're looking at our business model and when we're looking at who our future customers are, people are working from home now. I'm saving money on petrol. I'm saving money on, you know, not being able to holiday with my friends and family. So when I get the opportunity to be able to spend my money, I'm going to be looking for quality experiences. And I think that's another thing that redefining and looking at our business model allows us to do. It allows us to understand, you know, what our future customers are going to look like as well. A couple of ideas we've had is in other countries, people really put value on that local hospitality through a welcome host program. You know, are there any businesses out there who would, you know, welcome a visitor personally into the city or the county and give them almost like a residential tour of why I love Lincoln or Lincolnshire as somebody who runs my business here or who lives here? That works exceptionally well in other countries elsewhere. The other thing that we're currently working on, which again might kind of feed into how digitalization can help us invest in a business model of the future, is this thirst for virtual and visual information. And we're currently working with the University of Lincoln on a grant-funded programme to do a visual immersive experience in the Bailgate of Lincoln. People can't come and shop in Lincoln at the moment, so how can we create a virtually immersive experience where they can drop in Castle Square in Lincoln, navigate themselves around the historic heart of our city, maybe, you know, have access points at the shop doors where they could go in and still spend with those shops, but in a different kind of environment. And that's, again, that's a grant-funded programme which, you know, businesses can apply for. Other thing I just wanted to mention is we have a lot of conversations with government departments through what we do at Visit Lincoln. We work with our national partners, Visit England, and there is a real push on quality going forward. DCMS have recognised that because people cannot go overseas for those £5,000 worldwide cruises, they want those visitors to spend that 5k in UK businesses on domestic tourism. So in some ways, this is an ideal opportunity for us to really look at our business models, to look at the innovation that we need to create those higher value experiences that potentially there's going to be a new pool of customers there ready to spend their money on. And finally, when I look at the business model of what we do at Visit Lincoln, I not only look at what's happening, you know, immediately around us, but it's also having an eye to what's coming in the future. And again, as business owners, there's some quite exciting things coming down the line in terms of some of the town deal funds that the district councils have submitted. So if you're not familiar with the town deals, then Google them. But there's 6 towns within Greater Lincolnshire who are actually putting bids in for up to £25 million of funding within their town. I know Lincoln's put one in. So again, when we look at the future customer, you know, what investment is happening around our business that we can leverage and we can use to our advantage. So on that point, I'll just sort of I'll just add my question is, business modelling and writing a business plan is critically important, but how often should we be reviewing it, or how often should we be changing it? And are those changes based around circumstantial changes, or should we be kind of, you know, annually reviewing where we're going with our business through the modelling canvas that you just shared with us? As a question.
Yeah, Phil, do you want to start?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point, isn't it? How often do you review it? I think any business that just, you know, it stands still is probably ultimately, you know, not going to last in the long term. So I think it's important to keep reviewing what you do. There's nothing really which says you should do it every 6 months. You should do it every year. I think every business will be different. Some businesses are a lot more dynamic than others, and some are a lot more static. But all I would say is, yes, you know, it's certainly important to review it, even if it's an annual thing and you don't do, you know, and you decide you don't want to do anything to change the business. But yeah, any business that stands still is certainly in the long term is probably not going to last, in the long term. But it does depend on the business, and as I say, some businesses are a lot more dynamic than others. I used to work in an industry that was quite static. Really, it was very long term. It was underpinned by long term contracts with customers for possibly up to 20 years. So and that kind of environment doesn't really breed innovation. But other businesses are the opposite. They're very dynamic and they need to be reviewed far more often. The other thing I'd say about the business model canvas is, as with any academic model, it's based on someone else's research. So, and I've actually used this canvas in some MBA classes as well with students, and I say to them, if one of these components doesn't exactly fit what you want, please feel free to modify it to something that perhaps does fit, because your own business a lot better than I do. So I would also encourage that. Just going back to what you were saying a bit earlier, Charlotte, I went to a conference, a digital marketing conference about 2 years ago. It was actually at Heathrow Airport, and one of the big messages they talked about at that conference was the power of video. When you were talking about video and also virtual reality as well, but they were saying that the video is so now important. It's really important as part of your digital marketing strategy. Whether it's hosted on YouTube or Vimeo or whatever. But it was a big message: the power of video. Please don't underestimate the power of video. And also the growth of virtual reality and augmented reality, which I know is particularly useful for perhaps real estate, but also for tourism as well. I don't think it's going to be mainstream for every industry, but I think for hospitality and tourism, virtual reality, can have and does have a big part to play.
And just what you were saying, and please, to the panel, if anybody's got any other questions, then please do pop them in chat and I'll pick them up. But the other question I was going to have is how important sort of having your finger on the pulse with your customers is. If we're building a business model around what our customers want, what they value, how we translate our proposition in the shop or in our business into online. So my next question would be is, how important is collecting those touch points and feedbacks with our customers so we can then use them in kind of redefining or updating our business model. And I mean, one of the things we do, or one of the things I do, and I've done it, I think I've done it my whole life actually, is I have a folder on my desk called my inspiration folder. And if I'm reading a magazine or if I see something where I think that's a good idea, I'll screen grab it, I'll print it out, I'll throw it in my inspiration folder. And then when it comes to those moments where I have to sit down and sort of, think about doing things differently, you're not staring at a blank piece of paper. You can kind of reimagine all those good ideas. So how important is research and just collecting that along the journey, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it is critically important. I think it's you need to keep your finger on the pulse with your customer because their behaviors can change suddenly also, and they're very fickle. So there might be a new trend or a new fad, or they see something and something in the media which probably turns them to something else. So it's really important to have a sense in terms of what's happening with them, and that's why probably creating those communities online might help you do that, to understand what's happening or what's changing for them, or what's I would say one of the big things which is happening in hospitality also, we see it a lot, is with the social media influencers. They are a big marketing channel now, and a lot of people follow these influencers, and they follow exactly what they do. So so whilst we might not be following the influencers, we need to see what these influencers are saying, because they're shaping a lot of future trends in the industry. And in addition to social media, I would say influencers are also something we need to be paying attention to in a digital marketplace. I think as Phil mentioned, tech in terms of augmented reality and virtual reality, there's been a lot of conversations around this, especially now, in terms of will it actually replace the actual hospitality and tourism experience. And it's not going to, but what it's going to is to make it even better. So the challenge we always have is with the tangibility of the product. We cannot touch, taste, or feel it, but the AR VR experience can help us do that, but it can also help us manage that service experience a lot better. And one of the things I would add here is always thinking about what I try to do also is always thinking about how hospitality can impact on other sectors and how and support other sectors. So, you know, I was talking to a colleague about this last week. Is you know, we always having to find creative solutions around people queuing for food. But those same queues exist in hospitals, they exist in banks. And we've, you know, in hospitality with queue, in theory, we've developed creative ways of doing that, but also doing it with a service experience. So, you know, how could we transfer some of those principles to other sectors and also support those sectors? So we're not seen as the sort of laggard industry, but actually the innovative industry, which is what we are. You know, we should be at the forefront in saying, you know, these are how we do things, you know, or that service experience in terms of how you wait for some bad news. You know, we're really good at crafting a service experience in hospitality. So if we can transfer that into other sectors, I think that's where we can really see a competitive advantage coming for us also.
And I think, you know, from what we've discussed today, I'm certainly making notes and scribbling down ideas. So I'm conscious of time, so I'll pass back to you, Juliet. But I just want to say thank you so much both for coming and presenting. And it's been really, really informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte and Alicia and Phil. It's been great to have you with us today and sharing your insights and experience. And I hope that our attendees have found that valuable. I'd like to also thank everyone for taking the time out to join us for the webinar today, and apologies for us running a little over time, but hopefully it has been of value to you. We are keen to hear your thoughts on today's webinar, and we'll send you a survey on the presentation via email shortly. We'd really appreciate it if you could take the time just to provide us with a little feedback, please, and also include any suggestions of topics which you may wish to see delivered in future webinars. We're always looking for new ideas. The feedback will only take a couple of minutes to complete, so please do that for us. Also, just to say, just keep your eye on the Business Lincolnshire website. There's the latest updates on how to get your business back on track or beyond there, and also you can subscribe to weekly newsletter, which can be done through www.businesslincolnshire.com. Finally, we'd also like to let you know about some exciting plans that we have in partnership with Visit Lincoln to have 2 further webinars for the visitor economy businesses, and we'll be focusing, we've been talking a lot about digital now, how the importance of it. One of them will be looking at digital, how to find your ideal customer using digital tools, and also we'll have the product development for Great British Staycation 2021. We are developing these at the moment, so please just look out for further information on the Business Lincolnshire or Visit Lincoln websites. We'll post that as soon as there's more information available on dates for you. Also, just to let you know that Business Lincolnshire is running their annual virtual Go Digital conference, which is taking place on the 26th of November from 8:30 till 1:30. This year we are focusing on using digital approaches to help recover from the pandemic, and included in that lineup we do actually have a workshop on using video within your business and helping to promote your business. I know Philip touched on that earlier, so that might be something that you would be interested in. If so, just pop across to the Business Lincolnshire website, to the events tab on the website, and you can find further details of the programme of the day on there, and also how to register. So I'd just like to again thank you all for joining us today on behalf of Business Lincolnshire, Visit Lincoln and Sheffield Hallam University. It's been great to have you with us, and just add that I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for joining us.